Hello, I'm Tracy Nicholas, and welcome to Folkloring. I am a passionate folklore practitioner, and to me, folkloring is more than just a podcast. It's my commitment to help you connect with your roots and awaken the wisdom within you. Hi, everybody, and welcome to this episode of Folkloring. And I'm here today with Nora Herold, who is an author. She is a psychic, and she does channeling, and she is really one of the loveliest people that I have ever known. She is just beautiful inside and out. And we've been friends for many years, and I count myself very lucky to have collided paths with her. So thank you for being here today, Nora. Welcome.
Oh, Tracy, hi. Thank you so much for such a beautiful introduction and greeting and description of me and my work and all of it, right? I was laughing this morning. So, listeners, Tracy and I went to college together, which is remarkable. And I was laughing this morning like I was doing a timeline jump, going back in time talking to the two of us at
Oh,
Columbia College saying, hey, guess what? In almost 40 years, you'll be sitting down together and doing a podcast on folklore and magic and channeling and healing and watching the two of us go, okay, whatever you say, lady.
funny because when I was in college, it's one of the few sort of breaks from my paganism, from my spirituality in my life, because I was very interested in high school and I had gathered up all sorts of like what I could find back then. And then when I got into my 20s, like mid 20s probably, it sort of revived for me. But in college, I was so like stage manager, you know, that if someone had told me back then that we would be sitting down having this conversation, I would have been like, I have no time for that nonsense.
Yes, that is exactly how you would have responded. Me, on the other hand, I would have been like, oh, awesome, cool. Because I started my journey in a more organized way with tarot while in college. That's when I
Okay.
started. So when I was young, I kind of, you know, I had intuition and psychic flashes and was very sensitive and had all of those things going on, but I had no formal context, no blueprint, raised Catholic, right? Then said, fuck you to Catholicism, hope swearing's okay. Um,
That's
and
fine.
then, yeah, sort of started to develop my own spiritual belief system, patchworking things together from like, I don't believe any of it to maybe, oh, reincarnation sounds kind of cool. That makes more sense than the whole heaven and hell thing. But yeah, it wasn't until I got to college and even later in my college years that I started working with tarot, and that was my big door opening moment was beginning to learn the tarot, work with the tarot, use it in that way.
Yeah, I think that in college, and for anybody listening, it was the third floor in the building that we were taking classes in, and we were theater majors. And we had a classmate who had a tendency to wear lingerie over her other clothes. And even in the dead of winter, she'd have on like, like warm stuff, warm leggings or, thermal underwear with lingerie over it. And honestly, I don't think anybody would have like struck me as weird, like after having just accepted that as okay, that's the way life is.
It's fascinating that you say that. And first, let's say it was the 80s. So,
Yeah.
when it comes to fashion, that there's that. Um, but I grew up in the northwest suburbs of the city. I grew up in Mount Prospect in a predominantly white upper middle class neighborhood to middle class, middle to upper middle. I think we had one black kid in my whole high school and just a few Jewish kids and a few Asian kids, but like 95% white. And then I chose Columbia College down in downtown Chicago as my college. And the experience of diversity there was really life-changing for me.
Mm-hmm.
Growing up in an environment that was so white and often racist and anti-Semitic and definitely homophobic. And suddenly I was thrust into this incredibly diverse community of brown and black and
Yep.
all different colored skins and all different genders, all different sexualities. And I had this moment very early on where I looked at it and said, all right, fuck my upbringing. This is my new belief system. This is it.
That's such a great story because, like, that's your personal folklore in my mind. Like, that story, and I can, like, remember back to those times, and I can remember I came to Columbia a little bit later because I had gotten a full tuition scholarship from the governor. And so I had to go to a state school for my first 2 years. And then, so I did that. And so I was a little bit older when I sort of got thrown into that particular melting pot. And the state schools I went to were not very diverse either. I did grow up in a town that was like 80% Jewish, but it's similar. Mostly everyone was white. We did have Fort Sheridan, which they used our high school, and so there was a little more diversity. But the Fort kids kind of kept to themselves, and so it wasn't a big experience of mine. But yeah, that's like that story to me is a story that you just shared with us, and now we all have that as part of like that's how you developed into where you are today. And I love that.
Yeah, thank you. And I love that you put it in that perspective, right? In that container of folklore, that this is Nora's part of Nora's personal folklore experience, and it greatly impacts my work today, right?
Yeah,
My work is very outspoken and progressive in my politics and viewpoints, and weave that into my channeling and readings and healing. And to me, there can't be any separation between your politics and your spirituality because your politics are your spirituality,
exactly
right?
right. Exactly right. And even your like folklore has always been very political. And it's are we telling morality tales or are we talking about how to be a good person? And so and I would even suggest that your folklore goes beyond that. It goes into all of your relationships, how you are spending time, who you choose to spend time with, who your
Mhm.
partner is. All of it, I think, is part of that story that weaves through. And I had a really interesting conversation with a woman not too long ago, and she was talking, her specialty is Shropshire folklore. And she's a lovely woman. I really liked her a lot. But she was telling a story about how her grandfather had met the devil when he was a little kid. And it's so interesting because it's like now I think about that. And, she was like, when I was a little kid, of course, I 100% believed that it was true. And I go back to, for me, it doesn't matter if the folklore is true or not. And it's like, why do we believe what we believe? And why do we need to believe what we believe? And what our hopes are about these stories and why these stories are important. So, yeah, folklore is neutral in my mind.
I loved what you said there about it doesn't matter whether it's true or not, because that then prevents us, those of us that exist in these spaces, it prevents us from creating more dogma.
Yeah. Yep.
Right? Like religion is built on dogma, and this is the truth. This is it. This is the one way. And I like to perceive my work as offering a potential, or it perhaps it's even just a mythological understanding or a metaphor to help us better understand things that we can't really fully understand
Right.
because we're in human form.
Right. I had a very interesting conversation many years ago with a minister, and he said, what most people fail to appreciate is that there is a difference between truth and fact.
Yes.
And he was talking about the Bible specifically. And he
Yes,
said there's a lot of truth in the Bible, and people misunderstand that that means that those stories are factually correct.
yes, yes,
And I was like, okay,
yes,
all right. Oh my
yes.
gosh, I knew we were going to just dive right into this. I haven't even done like my regular intro. Okay, so Nora, have you been folkloring lately? And if so, how?
Yes, so I think I'm constantly folkloring. Here's something very specific I did yesterday.
Okay.
So early on in the summer, late spring, I picked up some tomato starts at the farmer's market here. I love the farmer's market. I handed them off to John, my partner of 27 plus years, because he is the farmer gardener in the family. I'm excellent at pruning, at picking, at creating with what has been grown. He is excellent at growing. So I handed them off to him. He planted these tiny little starts. We have had a bumper crop of tomatoes this year. I mean, it's exceptional how many we've had, and basil and some other wonderful herbs. And so last night I went and I picked about 8 or 10 of the tomatoes that are still green and
Mm-hmm.
that are kind of struggling to ripen right now. And for the first time ever, made a green tomato pasta sauce with some of the basil from our garden included. As I created that, I also created and put in my intentions for health and prosperity and abundance using my kitchen witch magic. And anytime I do magic for me, I'm also doing magic for everyone. That's my take on it, right? That
Yeah.
I include collective humanity in my magical practices. So that's my most recent folkloring, but I want to share one other thing as well, if that's okay with you.
Sure,
So
yeah.
this is another spell I love to do, and I just wrote about this in my Substack on Monday, and that's to go out in the community as a secret agent of love.
Mm-hmm.
So after last week, which was a very intense week for everyone
Right.
politically, right? And it's been rough just across the board for everyone.
Yep.
Once I finally tended to myself, which I always do first, right? I have to
Yep.
make sure I'm clear. I just went out into the world and hugged and smiled at and said kind things to as many humans as I possibly could, none of whom I knew, right? These were all quote unquote strangers to me, and
Yep.
dogs, right? I include the dogs in this as well. So that's another way that's another big folkloring action I take. And I find that very much supported those actions by the fairies that I collaborate with on the regular.
Yeah, yeah. That's great. And I think too, for me, I work from home. I'm one of the kind of people that is drained by too much interaction with people, too much peopling. So I think too that you can, I mean, it's great that you can go out there and like connect with people. And those are always such positive connections. And those kind of connections sort of buoy you up. But
Yes,
I think that just the act of working on yourself and your own energy does help the collective of humanity, because what we give to the world as far as our work, our creative work, our energy, all of that, if it's more positive than negative, we're helping everything be more positive.
yes, 1000% agree with you. Yes.
And it's so weird that, okay, so the tomatoes, I have had such bad luck with tomatoes. It's gone on for absolutely years. And there's only one section of my garden that I can even grow tomatoes in. And I've tried, composting, and I've tried what the spray, whatever that spray is that's all blue. I've tried like everything. And it's like no matter what I do, for whatever reason, when they grow, they have the toughest skins that I've ever had, and they don't grow very well. Like I don't get very, it's like, wow, I'll get like 6 or 8 plants for like, 3.99 each. And I'm like, and then all of my other herbs. And I'm like, I just spent $300 to get like 12 tomatoes for the year. Like what? So I've given up on the tomatoes. I've planted raspberries there this year,
Mm.
but I did what I was doing last night. I finally finished processing the last of my basil. So I made sauce.
Pesto,
Pesto, thank you.
pesto.
Yeah. And I must have in the freezer now, because it's been going on for like weeks now. I had so much basil. I have to have at least 8 cups, 10 cups of
Wow.
basil in the freezer. And I'm like, I'm going to be eating on that all year. It's going to be
Yeah.
great.
Yeah. Amazing.
So,
And that's such powerful abundance
mhm.
and prosperity work to pull something like that out of the freezer that came from your own energy, your the elementals and devas and fairies that right inhabit your space, and to ingest that during the darkest months of the year, to take that sunshine in so powerfully powerful.
Yeah, and it's funny too because when I moved in here, there were built-in like raised
Mm,
planters, and they're massive. They run all the way down one side of my deck. There's a little island one that's on the other side of my deck, and then down below my deck, there's another really long, massive one. So I had a friend here one year, and I had been planting, whatever flowers I was planting. I was planting annuals typically, and they were lovely, they were nice. And one year I was just like, oh, I just like I can't stand spending all this money to plant these flowers that last for the season,
mm,
and we don't have a very long season. And she just looked at me and said, you should plant all herbs instead.
mm, mm,
And so it began.
mm,
And so, and when I go and plant and when I go and harvest, of course, I'm thinking about my stories, and that is part of my story of why do I, grow all these herbs? Why do I have a ridiculous amount of herbs? And I think about Leslie being here and sitting out on the deck with me, and
mm,
me having that okay, I'm a dope. I should have thought of that moment. And how lovely it is that the gift of her presence gave me something that comes back to me
mm,
each year. So
mm, mm.
very
Yeah,
much.
that's really cool magic. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so we have more important things to talk about than herbs. Not that herbs aren't important. Herbs are very important. And I consider myself to be a kitchen witch. So
Mm,
I love cooking. I love and it's all, like to me, I pretty much cook everything. I can't really eat a lot of processed foods
mm,
because of my allergies and stuff. But I would anyway, because
mhm,
in my mind, food is love. And when I love having dinner parties, and when I do, I always think like, wow, like I'm winning here because I get like 2 days worth of experience around this, prepping and getting everything cleaned up. And like my friends only get a couple of few hours.
mm.
So like I'm the one who's making out best in all of this because
Yeah,
food is love.
it is. It's true. My paternal grandmother was a professional chef,
Oh.
my dad's mom. In
Hmm.
the 40s, I mean, she did something nobody did in the 1940s, early 1940s, or very few women. She got divorced, and she eventually ascended the ranks where she was at to head chef in the 1940s, a single divorced woman. So I know also for me, when I love to cook as well and consider myself also a kitchen witch, and I know that she was as well.
Hmm. Hmm.
Jenny was a kitchen witch, and I tap into that ancestral energy quite often when I'm cooking.
Hmm.
And I had a dream about Jenny just a few years ago. So she died when I was 25.
Okay.
And in the dream, she came to me and she apologized for not consciously passing on to me all that she knew about magic, being psychic. Like I had no clue. I mean, I had a sense. It's not true that I didn't have a clue. I
Yeah.
always had a sense as I got older. Oh, this in part must be connected to Jenny. So it was fascinating to get that piece of my ancestral history given to me in dream time from Jenny.
Nice. Yeah, that's really fascinating because it sounds like a very similar path that my mother took
Mm,
because she divorced her first husband, and this would have been in the 50s, so it
mhm,
was a little bit later. And my parents were much older when they had my brother and I, and it was very unusual for that time. And my mom, when she got divorced, she ended up opening up a restaurant. It was like a diner
mhm,
style restaurant.
mhm,
And that's how she met my dad because he owned the bar next door.
mhm,
And so, she really knew how to cook. And I remember just those, times in the kitchen. And it just seemed so natural to be like, you'd be standing up on a chair and you'd be cutting something and getting that knowledge from her. It was so, I don't know, it shaped me in a certain way.
mhm.
Now, my mother was not the kind of person who would believe in anything magical, anything, and so that part of it was certainly missing. And even though in later years she did like talk a little bit about some strange things that had happened, but that was just, like that, like she pushed that down for most of her adult life. So I did miss out on that kind of wonder when I
Yeah.
was little, but anyhow.
That's so interesting because I didn't really come into the understanding of my own cooking abilities, kitchen witch abilities until probably my mid 30s.
Okay.
In part because I didn't have that, like you were talking about, I didn't have that experience as a child of physically being present, watching, learning,
Right.
being indoctrinated, right? I had to get it, I had to channel it, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, and it's funny because my mom didn't enjoy baking at all.
Mm,
So I didn't really learn any of that.
mhm.
And, obviously I did the whole sourdough starter thing when we were in lockdown. I still have mine.
I haven't, that's the one thing I did not do.
Oh my gosh, next time I see you, I'm bringing sourdough starter.
Yes, please, I will receive it. Yay, John will be so happy. He'll probably do it. He's an excellent cook and baker as well.
Yeah, it's not very hard to maintain. You just like you have to feed it every once in a while. And if you don't, it starts to turn to, alcohol. Um, but when you put it in the fridge, you can go weeks without feeding it because it slows it down to a point. And I've learned some amazing recipes for sourdough discard. My favorite of which is a type of pancake,
Mm,
which the only ingredients is the sourdough discard, and then you add baking soda
mm,
and you mix it in, and the baking soda makes it like puff up, and
mhm.
then they're just like a savory. You can add sugar, but I like them savory, and so
Mm,
I eat them like potato pancakes with like a little applesauce,
nice.
sour cream. But yeah, I definitely will get you some sourdough starter, and now I have to
Thank you.
check. I have to check and feed it now. I actually let one go bad once, and but I had foresight because what you can also do with sourdough starter, you can take some and spread it really thin on like a cookie sheet and or any kind of baking pan and put it in the oven and dry it out. And then you
Mm.
just break it up, put it in a jar in the cupboard. And so I had to revive my dried sourdough when it became hooch. My live one became hooch. But
You know what I love about this is it's such a metaphor for learning how to work with magic and spells
mhm. Well,
completely, right?
yeah, and what I've learned over time is like first I started with, a recipe. And then like I would start to veer a little bit from it. And I got like one loaf, oh, it was so like wet and dense. And I was just like, I'm eating it because I'm not going to waste the food, but I don't like it. And so what I've learned is, the recipe is important, but it's about the art of understanding when the consistency is right. And, obviously I had just put too much water in and it didn't bake off properly, it didn't rise properly. And knowing that, then at that point I started experimenting with
Right.
change. And you change different, you add like some of a different kind of flour, and so I started to figure out what my sweet spot was
Hmm.
with sourdough. And that was such a fascinating process. And again, it's exactly like magic work, right?
Yeah.
You get a spell, you start with a spell, and
Right.
you hear all the jokes. Like at first it's like, oh, I get my candles out, I've got my, all my crystals, and I'm gonna put a curse on someone. And then, like, 10 years later, you're like, yeah, fuck them. And that's
Exactly
the
right.
spell.
Yes.
Okay, so
Yes, my spells are in the moment. It's like improv. For me, spell work is very much like improvisation, right? It's so interesting that I had a background in theater and improv and comedy and acting. Like I had no intention in my 20s that I was going to do what I do for work, but I pull from it, I draw from it all the time.
mhm. Well, that's a nice transition. Let's talk about what you do for work.
Okay.
And I have a couple of questions, and we can see where this goes. So you do a lot of channeling,
Yes.
which is fascinating to me. And I've got like where I think my weaknesses are in my spiritual practice. I've always had difficulty visualizing things. Like I'm one
Mm,
of those people when I close my eyes, it is just dark.
hmm.
And but I'm much better than I used to be because I've been working on it. And I also distrust like when messages come to me.
Mm,
I'm distrustful of that.
mm,
And like in retrospect, I can say, oh yeah, that was a clear message that was not my voice in my head. But I
hmm.
think it's difficult, and I think a lot of people find difficulty with that. And they're like, oh, I'm just imagining it. I'm just making it up. And again, from the folkloric perspective, it doesn't matter.
It,
If the message it comes to you and you're just making it up, that's how the message comes to you. And
yes.
so, but I think a lot of people struggle with that part of anything to do with psychic ability or channeling or anything like that.
Yes, when I teach channeling, so I've been teaching channeling for almost as long as I've been direct voice channeling, because as soon as I had my first experience of conscious contact with my spirit guide, Mirando, the unconditional love that I felt in the connection with that energy
Mhm.
was unlike any experience I had ever had as Nora before. Like
Mhm.
I thought I understood what the experience of love was, and I did understand
Yeah,
human love,
yeah.
right? But this was something so far beyond it
Mhm.
that I wanted everyone then, and still want everyone, to feel loved in that way,
Yeah.
unconditionally,
Mhm.
which I think as humans, we really can't achieve full unconditional love with one
No,
another.
no,
We just can't.
right. And I mean, I can appreciate that because I do have a guide where I feel that with as
Mhm.
well. Not my main guide. My main guide, Arthur, is sarcastic, but he's the guide that shows up for me when I need to get something done and I'm not emotionally in a spot to do it.
Mm,
Right.
mm,
And does it matter if it's Arthur, an entity outside of me, or if it's me channeling my old stage manager
mm.
days? And
Right.
it's like I have to drive and like and I'm like really upset about something, and into my brain pops, stop it. You don't have time for this shit right now.
Mm, mm.
And I'm like, oh, okay, right. But I think that it's wonderful that you can feel that, and I think that it's hard for people to know when they're starting out, when they're not haven't been practicing, to know like, is this in me or is it coming to me? And I
Mhm.
think that that's one of the reasons that I find energy work is so important,
Yes.
because you have to understand, when we talk about casting spells and all of that kind of lore, I think that Some of it is great because it is a ritualistic process. And I think in lots of ways, in lots of different kinds of folklore, we talk about Christmas, we talk about festivals, those rituals carry us through, and we need those. And so I think that it's fascinating that people are like, well, I don't know. It's like, well, here's what you have to work on. You have to work on your energy. You have to work on recognizing your energy, and then you'll know. And maybe you'll decide for yourself, it's all me. I'm just pulling into, and that's perfectly fine. Like it's okay if that's what you come to. But when you're out in the world, like I said earlier, I get kind of drained. I'm better now at recognizing energy that is angry, that is not mine. And I can say, I don't need to take that on. And so I think that's part of why I have struggled in the past with channeling, talking to my guides, and people call it so many different things. It's your angels, it's your patron saint, it's this goddess, it's whatever. It doesn't matter what you call it either.
Yes.
We have a knowing, and however it works in your particular story of how that knowing comes to us, you might just say it's intuition. And people, it's like they act like, oh, I just had some intuition. Like that's perfectly normal. And then they say, but channeling, that's made up, right? Like, so you magically knew something you couldn't possibly know. And that's completely reasonable.
Yes.
But some of that stuff, it's like we all do it. We all know.
Yes, and it's interesting because I very rarely run into that kind of skepticism any longer.
Mhm.
When I started channeling, so I had my first conscious contact with a guide in 1996.
Okay.
So, I mean, the internet was still very much a baby at that point, right? And our access to information was more limited.
Mhm.
And when I had that first contact experience, I walked into a friend's apartment in Rogers Park, which is where I'm once again living, which is hilarious, right?
Nice.
Walked into her apartment. She and I had a channeling experience together. She contacted her guide, I contacted mine, right? So we'd been reading tarot together for years, and then we started talking about channeling. She was telling me about this new friend she had who talked to her spirit guide. And as soon as she said the term spirit guide to me, it was like a big light bulb of recognition went off. I had been seeking for almost a decade,
Yeah.
and it was just never the thing. So I said, well, have you done it? Have you had contact with your guide? And she said, well, I've tried, but it's been a little challenging. I'm like, let's just do it, right? Let's just do it. And part of it is I was 29 years old. There was nobody in the room to tell me it was hard or that I couldn't, right? It was just me and my friend Amy going like, okay, let's try it. Like these two magical witchy girls.
Yeah.
And it was almost immediate once I said, let's try it. In
Mhm.
that moment, all I did was say yes to
Yeah.
something that was already happening, right? Like you were just saying, right?
You didn't say yes and?
I'm big on yes and these days, actually. Yes, in that moment, though, it was just a yes to the energy, to that experience. And it was very brief.
Mhm.
It was maybe a minute long of experiencing contact, knowing I had a spirit guide, knowing his energy was presenting as male, knowing his name started with an M, associating the color yellow with him. I also don't see very much. I'm very
Mhm.
clairaudient. I'm very claircognizant. I'm clairsentient. My clairvoyance is probably my least dominant ability, but
Mhm.
it has been coming online more in the last few years. I walked out of Amy's apartment completely altered. Like
Wow.
my understanding of who I was on this world as Nora completely changed in an instant.
Wow.
I started channeling nonstop for anybody and everybody I could at that point. I was waitressing and still acting at the time. So, I was kind of trying to have a regular third dimensional life experience while having blown open like my entire central nervous system and having past life memories, running energy through my body, doing Reiki on people before I knew what Reiki was, waitressing and hearing the personal details of the people that I was serving. It was,
Oh, oh God.
yes, it was huge, a
That's,
huge,
that's
and,
wild.
and I told everyone too, right? Like, you know me, I'm
Yeah,
there. I have no secrets,
yeah.
right? So I left Bub City, the restaurant I was waitressing at. There's another Bub City. It's not the same one. This was the old Bub City, the original Bub City for anyone in Chicago. This is the one that existed from 1989 to 1998. I don't know why I had to say that, but I do. Someone's going to be like, "Oh, Bub City, I know that restaurant." No, it's the old one. Anyway, I walked out one night like regular Nora, having just broken up with someone, struggling, depressed, and those things were all happening at that time that led me to that moment of saying yes
Mhm.
to my connections and my guide. And I walked in the next night completely different, changed.
Interesting.
And just going on and on about spirit guides and telling everybody who their guides were and channeling all the time, and then realize, like, oh, this is not working. I am not any happier. I am like half in and out of my body, completely ungrounded, right? Like using energy in ways that I didn't fully understand or appreciate. There was one night when I was mad at a table because they were my last table.
Hmm.
The entire restaurant had emptied out. He ordered another beer. I went and got it for him. I put it down in front of him. I went back to the bar, leaning against it, glaring at him, and his fucking beer glass exploded on
Oh,
the
God.
table in front
Oh,
of him. And I was like, oh shit. So, there's been there were a lot of intense lessons for me in that first couple of years before I took this on as my profession. And before I realized that it wasn't about doing all this cool shit, that it's about being more heart-centered, being more landed in my body, being of service. And that's an evolutionary path that's been ongoing for me now for as long as I've been doing this.
yeah, I think that part of my problem previously was that I'm always very kind of forward focused, like gotta get this done, gotta do that, gotta do this other thing. Don't have time, gotta do the laundry, gotta write a book, gotta, whatever it is. And so until I really sat with the concept of folkloring, I didn't take that kind of time. I would meditate, but like I often had, squirrel brain, and I would try to focus myself and see if images were coming up as I was meditating. And like they would. And so I'd like in my mind's eye, I'd look right at it and then it would, poof, it would be gone. And as I've sort of slowed down and said, what's the symbolism here? When I'm stirring this batter this direction, why am I doing that? I'm gonna light candles while I'm cooking because of the flame. And so once I've sort of taken that on as this is something that you can do, I even realized I was thinking, and this was within the last 2 weeks. I was thinking about how hard I'm taking a class, and part of it is doing some visualizations. And so I'm like, I hate that I don't see anything, or it's so hard for me to see things, right? And suddenly it occurred to me, and I'm like, well, wait a minute. When I'm dreaming, it's full blown movie time. I'm in it, but I'm seeing it all. And so I've been taking the time, like as I'm waking up and as I'm falling asleep, to kind of bridge that. And I'm finding that my visualizations are so much easier now that I've went, I'm just telling myself I can't see that.
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
so and obviously I wasn't telling myself that when I was asleep.
Right.
And I've certainly gone back to locations more than once in my dreams. I recognize them. I tend to have the same kind of dreams. And again, does it matter if I believe I'm astral projecting? or if I'm just saying I'm processing my emotions while I'm sleeping, none of that matters, right?
Yeah.
And it was just so nice to be able to use that in my practice. We use that, and that's one of the nice things about having this space that I live in now, where I can think about folklore and magic and all of that sort of thing, is because, again, everyone's working on themselves. We're always trying, well, hopefully we're trying to get better. Maybe some people aren't,
Yeah,
but
I wouldn't say that
yeah.
everyone is consciously working on themselves. I would say, yes, we are all always working on ourselves. And then there are people who more consciously intend to do so than others. Correct.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a very good way of
Nuanced way of looking at
yes,
that.
yes.
Yes.
An important line there. But yeah, I mean, I think that I'm very lucky to be able to, and I've always, like, even when I was like corporate America business, focused completely on corporate strategy and all of that kind of, when that was my life, right? I was still like, at that point, I had a budget because I was, a regional manager, and I have so many like business books, like, and it was like the business version of like self-improvement kind of
Yeah.
books,
Right. Right.
and which is like the, I don't know, new age version of like magic,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It's yeah, it's like magic dressed up in corporate casual.
Yes, which is a world that I have not played in. I think, a little unusual in this work, in that I like most of the people I know and work with had kind of corporate beginnings, and then at some point divorced from their corporate job and stepped into their roles as healer and guide. For me, I went from actress, waitress to this
Mhm.
without that corporate structure. And I find often people use me in my work. I mean this in a good way, use in a good way. They'll use my work to help them exit the corporate structure,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
Because I kind of hold this vibration of, you don't have to take that path if you don't want to. You don't have to stay in it if you are not fulfilled in it. Like, if you're
Right,
fulfilled in it, fantastic, right?
right, right.
But people tend to come to me when they feel they've reached a level of fulfillment there, and hit a wall and desire something different for themselves. So I kind of sit out here on the outskirts with, recently the guidance came to me, and this was so helpful, that I really needed to start lumping myself in with the performers, the artists, that group, because the group of channels and psychic mediums and healers is professionally is a pretty small group,
Yeah, yeah.
right? So what I like to be able to lean into the group energy for more support. So the suggestion was, okay, include yourself in that larger group of performers,
Mhm.
which, I mean, it was always, so that makes sense. And yet I've been sharing that with other healers and channels and guides, and I think it's been very helpful. It is helpful to feel like, okay, we're not so isolated in this little segment of reality, which kind of goes back to this I was trying to say about channeling and skepticism, and how I don't really run into it any longer. When I started channeling, most people didn't even know what it was.
Okay.
I would say I've started channeling, and people would say, right, what is that? Today, everyone knows what channeling means when I
Yeah.
say it.
Yeah.
The word channel and channeling has come into our everyday vernacular in a way that it was not there 30 or 40 years ago. And it's fascinating to see that evolution happen.
Yeah, I've seen a parallel. So, writing a book is a long process. And I thought for a little while, like, maybe I'm not gonna use like the same name I used professionally, because like the people that I worked with in construction for almost 20 years are gonna be like, Tracy went insane. Like, what happened? She used to be so logical, because I write about magic and I write about folklore and our belief systems and all of that kind of thing. And yes, I did use my real name on my book.
You
Because
did.
yes, because I started, and like over the years, I haven't had a corporate job in almost 10 years now. And when I started working by myself, I still wanted community. So I would make it a regular practice to get together with colleagues that I really liked from, my corporate life and stuff. And I started talking about some of these ideas, like how can we prove if magic is real? What about
Mhm,
quantum physics?
mhm,
And
mhm.
they were so unbelievably open to it.
Yeah,
And they were like,
right?
oh yeah, and I was like, oh, so none of y'all think I'm weird for, and
No.
it was like, no, wait. And they talk about experiences that they've had with spirits or,
Yes.
yeah, which are always very mundane. Like all the stories I've heard, it's like that spirit is out there doing something boring. It's not like a Victorian woman with a long dress gliding through moaning. It's never
No.
that. Okay, so what does it feel like when you are channeling? I assume that with all of this bombarding you in your 20s, you have found a way to control it, to use it in the way that you do. You channel regularly. And so what is that like?
So it's been certainly an evolution, the
Mhm,
experience.
mhm,
When I started channeling, the sensations were very intense. Sometimes I felt like there was energy inside my skull, gently massaging my brain.
ooh,
Yeah, but it was very comfortable. I never felt uncomfortable with the energy. I would get exhausted afterwards or be super hyper afterwards. Initially, when I was channeling, I would hear it first
okay.
and then I would give it kind of on a delay.
Mhm,
Now when I channel, I feel very little.
okay.
I feel just as I feel as Nora,
Mhm,
in part because I don't have the interpretation any longer that I'm connecting with beings who exist in some dimension that's far, far away, and I have to work super hard to get to them.
mhm,
My understanding of it now is that energy is always integrated into my own.
mhm, mhm.
So the Pleiadians want to come through, so I'm going to let them come through right now so they can demonstrate it. Greetings, Tracy, and everyone listening. This is the Pleiadian Collective. It is wonderful to have this opportunity to connect with all of you beautiful universal beings of love today. So we're going to ask you all to take a breath right now. Just inhale and exhale gently. And as you breathe, put your attention on yourselves, your own body. And just let yourself notice how your body is feeling right now. As you continue to breathe. So if you get into your head, right? So this can happen where you'll say, "Huh, how is my body feeling?" And then you'll forget to breathe and you'll drop out of your heart. You'll be up in your mental body, which is not useful when you're doing energy work. It's got to run through the heart first, and then the mental body comes online to facilitate in and giving language, form, understanding to what you're doing. But it all starts with the heart. So if you find yourself back up in your head, just take a breath and gently ride the elevator back down into your heart center and check in. How are you feeling? And we're asking you to notice how you're feeling right now, because to listen to channeled information means that you also are channeling as well. We're not just coming through Nora, we are interacting directly with any of you that are listening, that are tuning in, no matter when you do it, because for us, time is not linear. Space is not confined to physical density. So you can plug in and interact with us as we will interact with you, even if you're listening to this recording in 10 years, 20 years, 100 years, it doesn't matter. We are working multidimensionally in this way. And this is one of the reasons why we connect with you. We're not higher than you. We do not know more than you. We are not an authority for you. We have a different perspective than you. We share our perspective to help you feel more empowered, in your lives so you can take directed actions that help to bring about what you desire for yourselves, that help to facilitate your ability to operate from joy, to deepen your connections in your relationships with other humans, in your creative expression, in your magic, in any way you desire your work. This is our first and foremost, our intention for being with you, to be here as a system of support and unconditional love. And this is true for all of your guides, all of the beings that are working with you in this way. So we'd like to know, Tracy, if you want to ask us any questions.
Why is it that you choose to connect?
We choose to connect in part. And when we say we, understand that we, in quotation marks, are a vibration, an energy, right? We're not embodied in any way on any dimension. We exist as energy. So outside of your third dimensional experience, we are always all connected throughout this universe, and we know it.
Mhm.
We know that we are connected. There on Earth in the third dimension, you live a reality where you have to prove you are connected.
Mhm.
You have to prove it to yourself and to others again and again and again.
Mhm.
So we connect with you in part to help remind you that you are always connected
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
that you actually don't need to prove it. It's fine that you want to. It's fine that you all want to do it because you exist in the third dimension, which is a physical reality. And so you want physical proof. And yet, to do this kind of magical work, to do magic, to read tarot, to channel, to do reiki, to do all of the wonderful things that you do, there is a need to suspend your disbelief
Mhm.
and step into deeper faith with yourself. And we are here as well to support you in having more faith in yourselves, not in some big energy outside of you, your
Mhm.
faith in you, to help you remember that you are love incarnate, that you are source energy, and that you are valuable simply because you exist.
I have another question, if that's all right. When you were talking earlier about time not existing for you in the way that we conceive of it here, it immediately makes me think of the work that people are doing, particularly at the University of Sydney, with the cube time theory, where it's not like sort of linear time as we see it. It's more like there are different places that we can be in, and that's when we're perceiving time, we're actually in it physically in like the next place forward. And that is part of why some people believe that they can see the future, because sometimes as we're moving they get a glimpse ahead of like the next couple of few spaces or places. Are we getting close with that theory to how time really works?
Yes, that's a pretty close understanding of living in the moment and then stringing moment to moment together to create linear time. And earlier you were talking, Tracy, you were sharing about how you're in a space now where you're able to slow yourself down and be, and this is opening you up to more. And what you were describing there was fully existing in the moment and the importance of this, right?
Mhm.
So we can only be in the moment,
Mhm.
and yet we can jump to any moment that exists
Mhm.
in any dimension, on any timeline, in any reality, throughout the totality of the universe.
Mhm. So, if we are able to focus ourselves, slow ourselves down, open up to the connections, whether it's through you or other entities that are out there, what would you say is important for us to do, to think about, to maintain, to practice, whatever it is, so we can have the richest, most open experience that is possible for us with what is around us, the energies around us.
So first, to lighten up and not be too serious about it, right? Because think about the density of a serious experience and how that potentially could lower your vibration, right? So being able to connect in this way requires a bit of a raising of your personal vibration because it's like being on the radio band, right? So we like to use this example. So let's say you on in the third dimension on Earth are on the AM band and we're on the FM band. So you can't hear us if you stay on the AM band. You have
Right.
to jump to the FM band. But connecting with us is not that challenging because we want to connect.
Mhm.
So we adjust our vibration a bit as you raise yours. And the best way through that is to lighten up, be in a state of joy, of play, of magic, of exploration, right? Again, as Nora was saying, suspend your disbelief. Don't let the voices around you telling you you can't have any validity for you whatsoever in your life. And we would say that this advice that we're giving is not just about connection, it's about this way we would love to see you all living your lives
Mhm.
from this place.
Yeah, I think that's very interesting because, when people talk about raising their vibration, they usually talk about it in a very vague way. But
Hmm.
human beings have a vibrational part of the spectrum that we're on.
Yes,
It's somewhere between like 5 and 20 hertz. And the lower we get on that, within that, we will still be fairly healthy, but we'll start getting depressed. But there are so many ways that we can raise our vibration that it's not just oh, you've got to just like not be upset anymore. It's like you go out in nature, you know?
correct. Yes.
And when we get higher, we get too high, our vibration is off, and then we hit illness. And electronics heighten our vibration. But like nature will lower our vibration because the vibration of the earth is much lower. And so, going out and hugging a tree really does work. And it's all of these practices. It's like exercise, right? If you're not doing it all the time, then you're not just going to go in and lift, the weights you could a year ago if you haven't worked out in a year. And so it's that constant, like, have I been paying attention to my vibration maintenance rather than, okay, I'm going to raise my vibration or lower my vibrations right now, and I'm going to raise my energy, and then I'm going to be able to connect. It's like you kind of have to do it all along.
Yes, that's right. And it's very important not to ever define your emotions, any of them, as wrong or bad or negative because they all serve a purpose. So we
Mhm.
often see the perspective in more in some of the new age or magical communities that to be able to do this work you have to be all love and light and you can't feel sad, you can't feel angry. If you feel those things, you're going to fuck up your reality and create something bad. Look, you're all going to feel those things. You have a lot
Right.
on your world right now to trigger those feelings in you, and you're all carrying boatloads of baggage and unhealed trauma that gets activated at times.
Right.
Our suggestion is when those feelings come up in you, really allow yourself to feel them fully without judgment,
Mhm.
putting
Mhm.
yourself in a state of deeper self acceptance,
Mhm.
which
Mhm.
activates unconditional love, which then automatically raises your vibration.
Nice. So it's really interesting, and it does, in a way, tie back to the conversation that I was having with Nora earlier about folklore, and it doesn't matter if it's real or not. It's like if we're believing our feelings are bad and negative and we shouldn't have them, then we're going to interact with them in a very different way than if we say, okay, that's a feeling, and where is it coming from?
And how is it serving?
Yeah.
Right? Let's talk about anger. Anger is the emotion that you all gave yourselves so you could recognize when your boundaries were being violated or are about to be violated so you can
Mhm.
access your will and take yourself to safety.
Right. Right.
Anger is fear.
Mhm.
Fear's the red flag going off in the system that says, holy shit, danger ahead.
Yep. Exactly right.
The problem with those quote unquote feelings is emotions is they get tied to aggression, tied to acts of violence. Those are different things. Those are actions. Those are reactions to perhaps unhealed trauma. Anger very rarely causes that kind of reaction. We see it's much more likely that rage
Hmm.
is the emotion that can trigger a violent response, and rage is a byproduct of unhealed trauma.
Right.
So it's really trauma and unhealed trauma that is caught, and you had examples of that play out clearly on your world just last week.
Hmm.
You have examples of it every second.
Right. Yeah, exactly so. I mean, you can certainly have controlled anger. And then when it becomes uncontrolled, then it is into that acting out, because you don't have to act out on anger. You have to set boundaries. You have to decide what's okay to allow in your life and not. But you don't have to hit someone. You don't have to shoot someone. You don't, all of those things. Again, this gets back to the practice. If you practice being angry, you don't push it away from yourself, because that's when it becomes uncontrolled.
Yeah.
When you don't practice feeling it, and you just say, no,
Yes.
that's a bad way to feel. And so again, it gets back to our belief systems about everything, really.
We would say that when anger is felt in an unadulterated way, pure, it is pleasurable.
Hmm.
It's a flash of fire through the body that allows you to say no when you need to.
Wow, that's really fascinating. And again, we're taught from being very young, don't be angry. But the adults are saying that, but what they mean is you don't have to act out. When,
No, what the adults, this is Nora, are usually saying is we want to control you
well, that's true.
in your circumstances. I'm uncomfortable with you expressing your will. Please don't express your will in front of me, child.
And
This is Nora back, just to let you know. Not that was not the Pleiadians.
And I agree with that because, again, the Bible, morality tales, all of those things are about putting a moral value on different behaviors in order to control people.
Yes.
And we train our children to be controlled by saying, oh, anger is, would you like it if someone yelled at you? Or it's it's very interesting, and people, I think, have different levels of how they react to anger. I have a very good friend. We've been friends for 35 years, and we have had moments at which, like, I remember one time we were standing out in front of a tavern on Hubbard Street, yelling at each other about a guy. And then we went, wait a minute, how are we yelling at each other? And we went back in, had a drink, yeah, and because we yelled it out, right?
Yes.
And we
Processing your anger out loud with each other. Yes, John and I do it a lot.
no, but I have other friends that I would never do that with because I know
Right.
that being yelled at is very triggering. They were
Yeah.
bullied or whatever it was. And so it's like you have to be careful of that energy exchange, right? Well, this was very neat. I enjoyed that very much. And your voice definitely changed. Like I could tell when you were back.
Yes. Yes.
And it was a very subtle, slight difference in the way that you formed your words. I
Yes.
wouldn't even say accent, really.
No, exactly. It's me trying to approximate with my using my vocal cords
Mhm.
the vibration and energy of the Pleiadians. That's what that is.
Okay.
And it also is done to help people differentiate. So when Ursula the fairy comes through, she sounds very different. When Yeshua comes through, they sound very different, right? And it's all to approximate their energy and help everyone understand who it is that is coming through me in the moment.
How many different entities do you, I don't, it may change all the time, but
It does. That's the answer. And yeah, the three main are the Pleiadians, Ursula, who is a fairy, and Yeshua.
okay.
The Yeshua Collective. When I was, sometimes when I'm working one on one, I'll connect with someone who has passed. I'll connect with the spirit guides of my clients always. However, I don't channel them directly. I will channel directly more often than not the Pleiadians. They're kind of always my go-to.
Got it. So when they showed up, you said they wanted to come through. So it wasn't like you saying, "Okay, can you come through now?" And
No.
just like you're like, "All right, stand aside."
Yes, and I could feel it coming for a couple of minutes before I said it, right? It was like, oh, it's going to be time to channel. And I could always say no to that.
Mhm.
It's not like I have to channel.
Right.
So this is a two-way street. It is a collaboration. And if I didn't want to channel in the interview, I would not have.
Yeah.
I would have said, yeah, we'll put a pin in that.
Interesting. And I suppose, there are just times where you're, not feeling as well and so your energy is low and you don't want to, have that interaction right then, or you have something you have to do. Or,
Yes.
and it's just like sometimes we still are here in our human bodies and stuff needs to get done and bills need to get paid. And
Laundry needs to get done. I wrote a blog piece called Psychics Have to Do Laundry Too once because I was finishing up a reading with someone. This was years ago when I was reading tarot cards in the metaphysical bookstores in Chicago. And she was like, "What are you going to do after work?" And I said, "Oh, I got to go do my laundry." And she was so disappointed.
okay, that's hilarious because I actually have to do my laundry and I had gathered it all up and put it in the basket and I was going to do it. I was like, oh, wait, I'm recording. I can't be running the washing machine now. And so, like, as soon as we get off of this interview, I'm going to go do laundry.
Yes.
Okay, well, this was fantastic. So excited
Thank
that you
you.
were able to channel for us. And I'm going to go back and listen to it again so I can reconnect with that energy because that was really fantastic. And I was having a little bit of a racy heart earlier because of a reaction that I had had to a chemical I ran across. And that just like sort of calmed right down. And so it was really useful, especially like focusing on the heart
Yeah.
because I had been just sort of pushing it aside, like I've got stuff to do right now. So that was really nice. So I appreciate that. So tell us, Nora, how people find you, the kinds of things that they might want to connect with you, the kind of work that you do, like all of the different services you provide. How do they find all of that?
Yes, so you can find me on my website, which is noraherold.com. Just my first and last name strung together. I also have a Substack, but links to my Substack and all my socials are on my website. I offer one-on-one private sessions over Zoom audio. I don't do video in private sessions because I like to turn my head away from the computer when I'm channeling one-on-one. I do group events on Zoom. I'm doing some live in-person group events I'm doing one in Evanston on September 28th. I don't know if this will air before then. And then I'm going to be doing another one at the beginning of November in Chicago. So that info will go on my website. And then I also teach. So I teach channeling, I teach tarot. I have a tarot class coming up in October. That'll be online through Zoom, so easily accessible for anybody wherever. Class sizes are always a little small and intimate, so I can definitely give one-on-one time to everyone.
Mhm.
And then I'm also Reiki master. So Reiki is woven into my sessions. And then my partner, John, is a Reiki master. He is available for Reiki sessions through Zoom online. It's all online these days right now on my website. You can find him on my website. And then I have decades worth of recordings and articles and so much content on my site as well.
Okay, I will put a link to that in the show notes so people
Perfect.
can,
Thank you.
yeah, find it. And thank you very much for taking the time today. Do you have any final thoughts for listeners?
This is the Pleiadians. We'll just come in and say, we love you. We love you. We love you. We are always with you, always available to you, as are all of your guides, your other helpers, your fairy guides, all of the beings you regularly connect with. Yes, this is Nora. I love you all too. Thank you
Thanks.
so much for tuning in, Tracy. I love you. Thank you for having me on.
Thanks. I love you too. As always, thanks for listening to Folkloring. If you liked what you heard, please consider leaving a rating and review. And don't forget to subscribe on your favorite podcast app so you never miss an episode. If you have any questions or comments or would like to suggest a topic for a future episode, please email us at folkloringpod@gmail.com or message us on Facebook or Instagram. Other places you can find me are at the Folklore Podcast as the theater, film, and storytellers correspondent, or creating folklore-inspired games at madmenandheroes.com. Stay curious, stay connected, and keep the traditions alive. And I hope that wherever you are, folklore is making your life more magical.